be transferred to us from Zoom and it's saved on the cloud, and then we'll have to upload it to Facebook and YouTube.
Very good. So I'd like to call the meeting to order if that's appropriate. It's the Montgomery IDA meeting for November. Has been postponed to November 23rd today at 3 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody and apologize about the meeting changes, including some tweaks today. I know last week was at the last minute and some of you were already at town hall. So my apologies for that, really out of our control. I'd like to introduce and do roll call at the same time, just so we know who's on, starting with Matt Stoddard.
Here.
John Dixon.
Here.
Randy Green.
Here.
Bob Santo.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
Our Executive Director, Connor Eckert.
Here.
Secretary Sue Haddon.
Here.
And Captain Bob McLaughlin.
Hello.
Miss anybody who's representing the IDA today? I don't think so. I'd like to move to the approval of the October 13th, 2020 minutes. Any additions, corrections, or a motion to approve? By show of hand, I guess, for the motions.
I make the motion. We approve.
Motion to by John Dixon.
I'll second.
Second, Bob Santo, thank you. And does that need to be roll call? Is Bob?
I would do a roll call because you're on a Zoom.
Sounds good. So we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes for October 13th meeting. I'll start with Matt Stoddard.
Yay.
John Dixon.
Yes.
Bob Santo.
Yes.
Randy Green.
Yes.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
And I'm in favor as well. That's 6-4, none against. Motion carried. We were scheduled for public comment at this time. We do have a call-in number, but we'll move that to the end of the meeting if we can
Jeff,
get. Yes.
we've got people on the line now.
Yeah. So Jeff, I apologize. I thought we couldn't record them. If we can record them, we should stay with the agenda and go through that.
And Connor, can they hear us then?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Can you guys hear me on there?
I can hear you, but the audio on the meeting itself continues to cut out.
Yeah, we're working through that now. At the very worst case, we're going to have it uploaded. But I believe we're about to open the public comment session if you guys wanted to form some sort of a line. Correct, Jeff?
Connor,
That's correct. And
there's no video. Do you know that on Facebook?
Yes. Yeah, we're working through that.
Hey, Sylvia's on the line.
Hey.
and I welcome Kevin Loki to our meeting. Kevin, we're doing a public comment session, then we'll jump to the local labor review. Connor, I would just ask, and maybe you could reinforce if people can't hear me, the public comment, I would ask people respect a 3-minute limit. I would also say that it's Connor's and my expectation, we will not act on the uniform tax exempt policy today. That action will most likely be December 8th. And we would expect a further draft of the policy before that meeting by hopefully at least 7 days. So Connor, maybe you can manage people who like to speak and
Sure.
have them introduce themselves.
Sure. Okay, guys, we opened the public comment session. So first person, please step up, and we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we're going to defer to Sylvie to start it off for us. Go ahead, Sylvie.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I have two things I want to talk about. I'll keep it very short because I want to be respectful of time, and it's a very big agenda I saw. First, I just want to say a quick thank you to Connor again, because after the most up-to-date UTEP policy came out at the beginning of the month, he and I were able to sit down and go over that again. I just want to say thank you to Connor for his time. And after Connor and I sat down, I went back to the team at Residents Protecting Montgomery, and we drafted an updated letter, which I know was sent out to the board a couple of weeks ago. So I realized because of the time constraints, I thought maybe I would just pick out a few important items that I want to give you some context behind that were kind of new and different from our original letter that we sent out for the first UTEP policy. So the first thing, I'm going to start with the recommendations and then end with the questions, which is kind of how I did it last time. The first thing is that Connor and I actually talked about this when we sat down, is that the updated UTEP policy didn't have any list of general considerations, and he pointed me over to actually a different policy that the IDA has, which has a very long name called the Policy Respecting Uniform Criteria for the Evaluation of Projects, which I'm just going to call the Uniform Criteria Policy. And ultimately, when I went into that, I realized that that's very accurate. Connor was right, that the IDA has a separate policy that should have the list of considerations for the approval of any pilot. When I went into it, though, I noticed that it didn't have a date on it, and it was very outdated. So my first recommendation is whether you decide to put general considerations and what is important for a pilot to be approved or not in your UTEP or your uniform criteria policy, just please update both of them during this project, because I think these things are just very important. From an RPM standpoint, or from my perspective, it doesn't really matter which one. It's just that the general considerations are all listed in there. And the ones that I'm talking about specifically were the general considerations that are listed in the New York General Municipal Law, 874. The next thing as a general recommendation that I think is really important was new in this letter that we didn't cover in as much detail in our first letter, is building out living wage and what that means. So in the first letter that we sent, we had requested that living wage be added to the UTEP policy as a consideration. In the updated draft, that wasn't done. So what we decided to do is be more specific about what we're looking for and why. So the idea behind putting living wage in to a UTEP policy, and whether you put it in the cost-benefit analysis or even in this separate uniform criteria policy, honestly, it's not important where it goes, it's just that it's there, is that a job is not just a job, right? So if jobs don't pay enough to live in our county, it doesn't matter if you bring in one of them or 600 of them. We want the jobs that come to Montgomery to be competitive and quality. So this living wage recommendation, what it's doing is ensuring that we achieve that goal. So the recommendation was that if a company that is bringing in more than 100 jobs to the community, they have to meet certain minimum goals as far as their wages. So at a minimum, all of their employees have to make the Orange County living wage. But on top of that, 25% of their employees have to make at least 150% of the living wage. And then on top of that, an additional 25% of their employees have to earn over 200% of the Orange County living wage. And what that does is ensures that larger companies, essentially these multinational billion-dollar companies that are big, are paying wages that are quality and competitive for our area, and that people can afford to work and live in Orange County. So I just wanted to show that from our first letter, we were just more, we gave an overview of saying, please include living wage, but in this letter, it's much more specific as to what we're looking for. And there is a precedent this living wage criteria is in the Ulster County IDA matrix for consideration of pilot applications. So
Hey,
there
Sylvia,
is absolutely a precedent to including it.
Sorry, Sylvia, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're just friendly reminder you're at 5 minutes. So I
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but
Okay,
we're trying.
No, that's okay. I get excited about these things, so I keep talking. I'm going to talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to pop off. Actually, two more, but they'll be very short. The other thing I wanted to do is to consider when you guys are doing your 15-year strategic schedule. What I noticed is that there were like 4 years of 100% of tax exemptions, and one of the recommendations that we're having that we put into this letter is on my page 2, is that you don't give as many years of 100%. Is that overall you can give the same benefit over 15 years, but having companies start contributing to the community immediately is really important. And to have any company come in and for 15 years, they're going to get, these reduced taxes, but 4 of them, they have, it's 100%. So one of our recommendations is to actually just keep the benefit the same, but have the tax exemption start at 90% so that there's contributions immediately to the community. Okay, so that's the highlights of the things that I think are most important in this letter, although I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that what this letter, I don't want to be, what's the word? Well, I just want to be honest in this letter that what I'm representing is ensuring that huge corporations that are multinational billion-dollar corporations are not getting pilots in our community, number one, because they don't need them. Number two, because we are extremely valuable in our land and we don't need to be giving away these types of community resources. They don't provide, as of yet, extremely valuable jobs. And what I think we can do is incentivize smarter companies to come here. And I think that this UTEP policy that's updated does do a lot of that. It does have this great advanced manufacturing section of it, but I just want to make sure that we're also being more strict with these huge warehouses that I know are knocking at our door.
Thank you,
okay,
Sylvia.
And then the last thing I want to say is I want to have an opinion about the local labor waiver, but I was unable to find enough information on the website or the agenda to have an educated opinion. So I'm going to listen to all the presentations today and probably make up my own list of questions. So I just wanted to know how can I respond to the local labor waiver since I'm getting information
Sylvie,
today.
on the website under meetings, waiver recommendation from local labor monitoring firm Loki Brill, the one-page
I read that. It was not enough.
So that is
I found
what
that
is
letter
there.
to be extremely confusing.
Sylvie, we're going to have to
not
move
answer
on to the
at
next
least
person, but thank you very much.
What?
I'd be happy to sit with you
All right,
and
that's
talk to
fine.
you, but
Okay.
we're just going to move it to the next if that's appropriate. But thank you for your comments. Well noted, and
No problem.
we'll jump on to the next person just to be fair, but thank you.
Yep.
Okay, guys, if you don't mind, this is Don Berger. I'll take it from here. How's that?
Thanks, Don.
Okay, so the first thing I want to touch on just briefly is just say that I really appreciate the IDA working with Sylvie, myself, and Residents Protecting Montgomery on this new UTEP policy. It's been a lot of time. We've worked very hard, RPM and the IDA board, and I appreciate that. The one thing I do want to say about the UTEP is that I'm wondering if everybody realizes out there that Valley Central, our largest tax jurisdiction, is under 21 pilots. With the state of affairs in New York right now coming to budget time next year in April and May, could you imagine the taxes that residents may not have to pay if they weren't under so many pilots? That's just a consideration. What I really want to talk about is the waiver. And I'm going to touch on what Sylvie said. I do have the Loki Brill letter in front of me. Unfortunately, that is not enough information. The letter of Loki Brill really tells us nothing. I had talked at the last meeting that we do need more information in order for us to comment on things. We need the information. And just this letter of the Loki Bro recommending you guys move this waiver forward certainly is not enough information. One thing I'd like to know is how many jobs they're talking about on this particular job. So moving forward on that is I'm very concerned that here this waiver is for carpentry and millwork. I always come up with the catch-all phrases. Where is this going to stop here, guys and gals, on these waivers? We have the plumbers, we have the electricians, we have the people that are going to do your air conditioning, we have the people that are going to do your heat. When does it stop? Are they going to move forward on waivers for those jobs also? And we have here, and Matt Stoddard actually talks about it on the Construction Contractors Association, that we're adhering to the 85 local labor law policy. The quote is, Amazon is required to use at least 85% local labor. I believe we've already given 4 waivers if you approve this one. Are those waivers part of the calculations for the local labor policy? Are they being included, the local labor in which we allow these waivers to be approved? That would be interesting to note. I just think that we have these carpenters that may or may not be employed here at Amazon / Sailfish Blue Water. I'd like to ask you guys one question. Has anybody done any research on this from this board? Do we know how many of the Carpenters Union, local Carpenters Union, are not working right now? Are they fully employed? Are our local contractors in and around the Hudson Valley under the local labor law policy, are they fully employed? Have anybody done any of that investigation? I would hope, in knowing that my time is really kind of catching up on me, is that you can't approve these waivers like this. In part, Amazon came before the boards and they had a budget. They told us what these projects were going to cost. I don't think it's a job of the IDA to help them control their budget. They knew full well going in what the wages in this area were like. They should have compensated for that in their budget. And moving forward, I just don't think we should be their person of status that will control Blue Water's budget. That's not the role of the IDA. So looking forward to your vote on this today. Hopefully you will vote no on this, just to send that message that just because we have high wages, that we have high wages, that we're not going to accept these waivers moving forward for, in particular to, as I mentioned, other electricians, plumbers, air conditioning, heat, and every other craft that might be working at the Blue Water site.
Thank
So
you,
with
Don.
that, I appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak. Have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you, Don. Have a good one.
Hi, this is Barbara Lerner. Is it my turn?
Yes, Barbara, how are you? Step on up.
Good. How are you? I'm glad
Good.
everybody is here. I'm glad everybody is healthy. Having been in the construction industry for the past 35 years and growing up in the business, we do plan every single time we put a bid together. We search the labor market and we know it is available. Before the IDA granted the very, very first tax abatement, it was a known fact that this could potentially become an issue. The fact that there may not be enough local labor, and I believe Mr. Stoddard even suggested lowering the threshold from 85 down to, I believe it was 65. I can't be absolutely certain. So this is a known factor, and this is something that experienced contractors plan for. It almost seems disingenuous on their part to ask again for yet another waiver for local labor. This is part of planning. However, all of that said, there is an option that they have. They can either pay more to their laborers and get people who are maybe currently working on other sites to come work for them, or they can extend the period of time. Both of these impact their profitability. It is their choice. It shouldn't be on the shoulders of the town of Montgomery taxpayers and the town of Montgomery IDA to grant an abatement and ensure their profitability, because they have chosen, knowing full well the labor force was not guaranteed to complete the job in the time frame that they have. It's not our responsibility to ensure that they make money on this job. If they raise the wage for their employees, I guarantee you that somebody will jump off another site to come work with them. If they extend the period of time for completion and work with the force that they have and maintain that 85%, yes, it will take them longer, but they will comply with the agreement that they signed to. They should not receive yet another waiver. It is not our responsibility to support either the contractors or the largest company in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too.
Next person, step on up. Is there anyone else waiting to speak that hasn't spoken? Hello?
Sounds like we're wrapping up the public comment session.
Sounds like it. Last chance. If anybody wishes to speak, please speak now.
Thank you, Connor. Moving on to our next item would be the local labor monthly update and discussion. I'll turn it over to you, Connor, and I'm not sure who's going to go first there.
Sure. So as alluded, we did receive a waiver request for the carpentry and millwork package. But before we do make that decision, we have Don Chase of Blue Water here, Craig Davenport of RC Anderson, and we also have our local labor monitor himself, Kevin Loki, here to give us an overview on the project, to answer any questions we might have, and to kind of just show us what this project is doing and the path it's on. So with that, Don, Craig, and Kevin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Connor, and Jeff and the board. Thanks for this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. Wish we were able to do it in person last Thursday, but I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to give you an update on the project in general. Also give you an update on the local labor inclusion and statistics regarding folks who are actually working on the project. And I'm going to have Craig, I'll turn it over to Craig, and he can walk you through the carpentry and millwork exemption request. And then we're obviously here to answer any questions. Frank Ryan is in my office here listening in as well. He's our senior construction manager. So just regarding the project and construction, as you may have seen, the building is up. All the walls are up and in place. We are completing the roof and the weatherization of the roof as we speak. We've begun the internal slab pours, and we'll be continuing that throughout the next several weeks. The vast majority, if not all, of the mass earthwork is completed. The wetland crossing has been completed across to the 747 entrance. The Haber House has been moved in compliance with SHPO requests. The Haber House will be improvements made to its new location, and we'll be continuing to work on the Haber House to put that back into shape for a future use. We're a couple of months away from delivery of the wastewater treatment facility along 747. And as we sort of wrap up the exterior construction this winter, hopefully we'll get most of the paving down around the site. Work will continue on the project through next June. So we still have a ways to go on this and still have a lot of work to do on it. But for the most part, the major items, the major exterior items, retaining walls, stormwater, are all complete. We continue some wetland mitigation and some construction of some wetlands also along 747. So you may have seen that. Just a couple of comments regarding the local labor and just some projections and statistics for the project. So as of last week, November 14th, we've had just over 8,500 man days on the project. That's however many workers per day times the number of days. 8,500, just over 7,500 are local. So that's results in a little over 88% of the people actually doing the work are local. We anticipate another roughly 10,000 man days through completion. And at the end of the project, we think we'll have over 18,000 man days and about 16,000 will be local for about 87%. So to Mr. Berger's point earlier, some of these exemptions aren't necessarily count a lot of workers. So when you look at that from a perspective of how many people are actually on the job, who are local, who are working and earning a paycheck on Project Sailfish, right now we're tracking to 87 to 88%. So far we have, we expect total around 91 million in construction costs. That's spread out over 30 total subcontractors. 18 of those are projected to be local with a value of about $71 million, so almost 80%. We have about 12 at this point, including some supply only contracts that will be non-local. And again, several of these exemptions, especially the early ones have been specified products or materials or warranty items that they could not be met with local contractors. So far to date, we've engaged over 43 local businesses in terms of helping support the project. This ranges from, the United Rentals and Fastenals, Home Depots of the world to the Dunkin' Donuts and Johnny's Pizzeria and Montgomery Police Department. So those are in addition to, vendors and subcontractors who are on site every day. So that kind of gives you a perspective of on the local involvement in the project, just from the local community specifically. Many of those people are directly there in Montgomery and Newburgh and just, in the neighborhood, so to speak. I'd also mention, and I don't think this was finalized by the last time we were here before the board, but on behalf of Project Sailfish, we were able to contribute right at $100,000 to the Tom Strong initiative that was set up to fight, to help local businesses survive during this COVID period of time. That was led by our ownership group with USAA and Blue Water, as well as our contractor, RC Anderson, and many of our initial subs on the job, including our architects and engineer, and even some local folks who were involved in the transaction. So I think that's something just worth mentioning here, even though it's not entirely relevant to the local labor policy. So again, Craig will detail here more in a second, but this local exemption was based on an exhaustive effort to include local contractors in this, and Craig can talk about some of the bids that he sent out and what the responses were. Any questions on that part of it? Okay, Craig, would you mind going through the Phillips exemption?
Sure. Everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Yes, I think everyone's seen the presentation, the recommendation letter from Loki. Contained a significant amount of backup documentation that I'm just going to try and run through at a high level, most of which is included in the letters. But I just want to kind of speak to the overall process that we went through to solicit bids and how many contractors we went to, et cetera. So this particular trade, actually to this point is a trade that had the highest number of solicited companies. So we solicited a total of 37 companies over a series of 3 or 4 different bid timeframes. So that's the highest single number of companies for one particular trade. Of that, approximately 22 of those companies were either local companies within the 7 counties, or they were capable of providing the labor to perform that work within the 7 counties. So that also is the highest number of local contractors by trade that were invited, solicited to bid. We went through a first round of bidding on this and first attempt to submit an exemption request. That was done with a total of 8 viable bids that we received, 7 of which were local bids. That initial exemption request was determined to have a couple of fundamental issues, errors in it. This is spelled out in the letters, both my letter of an exemption request and Loki's letter. There was an incorrect proposal used initially for Phillips Construction, who was the low bidder. And then in addition to that, we were made aware that one of the previously non-local compliant bidders was now able to comply to the local labor policy. Previously, we weren't aware that that was the case. And then secondly to that, we were made aware that the local unions would be applying a pinpoint target relief fund back to this particular trade. Again, something we weren't aware of. A determination was made at that point that the fairest and most transparent process would be to rebid the entire job, which is what we did. We went back out to the previously presented 8 bidders. A couple of those bidders were unable to bid the job. We went and we found another local company, to at least one more local company to try and take their place. So we ended up going through another bid process with them. And again, settled on eight bidders. 2 of them were non-local, 6 were local. Sorry, I apologize. 6 qualified bids at the end of the solicitation process. 1 of those bids was non-local. The 5 remaining were local. At the end of the day, there was a significant cost differential between the low bidder, being the non-local bidder, and the balance of the remaining local bids. Henceforth, the submission for an exemption request that we feel is in compliance with the labor policy and the available exemption reasons. That's pretty much all I had. I'm not sure if Kevin has anything to add. I know they kind of hit a bunch on a high point there.
I might jump 1 sec.
Yeah, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, maybe for one, going through your process, and two, giving any thoughts on this exemption yourself. All the board members received, and is posted on our website, your recommendation for approval because of significant cost differentials. But please give us your thoughts and then maybe even delve in a bit to your process. Thanks.
Sure. Obviously we received the exemption request. The first exemption request, as Craig had mentioned, there was an error for Thermex was actually on the quote for Phillips Construction, and that had put their price point at a higher point initially, still being significantly lower than the other local bidders they had. They made the correction to that and resubmitted, and as Craig mentioned, they invited all the bidders back to the table to provide updated numbers. We call all of those companies to verify that all these prices are correct. We have to read through these waivers to make sure that in the different quotes, everything matches and that, each of them have the same, product scope and project scope for all of them to ensure that, everything's accurate. Call the companies and in our opinion, it's a cut and dry price point differential. A significant price point differential is excuse me. On top of that too, if I understand correctly, speaking to, I think Don had made mention of this too, and the amount of, project workers for this element of the job. And I'm not sure if Craig can clarify. I think we're talking about a crew of 10 to 12 individuals a day as part of this trim work. Is that correct, Craig?
Correct. Yeah, there will be some fluctuation in that for startup and peak and then the wind down. So there may be days where it's slightly higher than that, but across the duration of time that they'll be on site, that's a pretty good average.
So, and again, we have to do our own investigating, obviously, on all these companies to make sure that everything is sufficient. That's also another question we ask, though, is how much labor are we talking about? What is the duration that this company will be on the project site? What is the cost of this particular portion of the job versus the rest of it? As far as local labor goes on the job in all other respects, the biggest players, if you will, on the project are well in compliance. They've been doing a good job maintaining compliance. But again, in this particular issue, speaking to this waiver, it's a cut and dry price point differential. The initial that they had sent out, I believe, had something like 37 people were invited to bid, 37 different companies. Obviously, not all of those companies will submit a quote, but I feel that they made the appropriate effort for a price point differential.
Thank you, Kevin. And I might just mention, and I got interrupted. I didn't have one of my phones on properly, do not disturb, but Kevin Loki and with his firm, Loki Brill, is our third party professional that reviews the documents, validates the information, and abides by our local labor policy. I might point out, and I think I'm right about this, Matt, it was less than 2 years ago, we adopted our local labor policy, in which case we had no management of what labor was used. So we've come a long ways. It doesn't mean there's not more to do going forward, but we do have this labor policy in place. And until it's changed and we have closing documents with Sailfish that we need to abide by the guidance in that local labor policy. So we'll take this question up here in a couple of moments. Matt, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think everything was covered there. As one of the things I'm looking forward to as a committee is that we're going to look into the local labor policy and maybe revamp it and make it better. But as of right now, the way it stands, it looks like this company is in compliance.
Thank you, Matt. And I might just say to the comment, has the board ourselves looked at this? The answer is yes. We have regular conference calls specifically with Kevin Loki to review the local labor monitoring reports. A number of us have had site visits specifically to Amazon with Kevin to look at what's going on there. And we take this seriously, and that there is an avenue through our local labor policy in under certain circumstances for us to present a waiver. That's part of the policy if the information is validated. So anything to wrap up, Don, on your comments? You want that done?
Sorry, I was just trying to go off mute. No, that's it. As far as long as if there's no other questions, again, we just wanted to provide you the summary of what's going on at the site, just bigger picture as well. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
And maybe before we move to the consideration of this waiver, Kevin, we jumped ahead a little bit. I don't know if you're able to just give us an overview of your monthly report from October, which goes through each contractor who's on site with this percent local labor for each of those contractors, not only for Sailfish, but for Stewart Holdings.
Sure, I can do that. So in regards to Stewart Holdings, which is largely complete, I'll actually be visiting that project tomorrow. But that job has basically had 100% local labor, remembering that the policy is 85% by contractor and by subcontractor, by sub of sub, et cetera. All the companies of the total of 20 that have been present on that job have met 100% local labor compliance. And again, that job there's some punch list items going on now, but that's should be completed by month's end. So I guess by basically Monday of next week. And I'll verify that information tomorrow. In regards to the Sailfish project, so there are some companies that are under the percentage based on how the policy is written. For example, Warren County Trucking is one of those. Now, Warren County Trucking is a subcontractor of Patillo. And we're talking about, I believe they had one individual on site, each day when they're there, where there's not a lot of people there for Warren County Trucking, but they're 13%. Fall Fittings, which enterprises, those are involved with the Haber House restoration and moving. Those are currently under the 85% with Fall Fittings at 38, even though they are a local company. And we have talked about that as well as which with Frank and Don. And, again, I'm not sure if those companies are gonna be able to meet compliance, as that portion of the job is largely completed. Sullivan County Paving is at 75%, but they are going to be back on site. They're going to have more of a local workforce, obviously a local company, and I do expect them to meet 85%. But the largest, I guess, when you're talking about the amount of people physically on that job would be Patillo, which has basically been there since day one. They're 89%. I would say that another big player is going to be MDS, Pareca Electric. MDS is at 100%. Pareca is at 93%. Hudson Valley Roofing and Sheet Metal is a subcontractor of Greenwood Industries. They're 100% and 86% respectively. And those are the biggest, amount of people on the project. Same with Sullivan Construction. They're at 96%. But again, the numbers are good with the exception of a few small companies that had a very little involvement when we're talking overall manpower on that job. And some of them may meet the 85% by the time the project is said and done. That's not for sure. The issue with Warren County Trucking, we've brought up, with Connor as well, and discuss how we're going to handle that situation, being that they're a sub of Patillo. And I guess the understanding was that they would be under the umbrella of Patillo's labor, which they are not. So that's an unresolved issue at this moment.
Thank you, Kevin. Board members, any other questions for Kevin? Or Don or Craig, for that matter?
Yeah, Jeff, this is Tom. If I could just ask a couple questions.
Go, Tom.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank, Don, Craig, and Kevin for obviously a very thorough process that you've gone through and transparent information you've been able to share. Just a couple of key questions and kind of hinging on the statement that Don, you started with by saying that we exhausted all options to really consider the opportunities for local labor. Just two specific things I wanted to confirm. One was, once we got the lowest bid in place, who was non-compliant with the local labor, do we go back to the next lowest bidder or any one of the next lowest bidders who were compliant with the local labor and offer them an opportunity to provide a best and final to meet or beat the lowest bid? And if not, is there anything that would prohibit us from doing that? And then I do have a follow-up question depending on the answer to that.
Don, I can answer this if you
Yeah,
want
you
to.
can answer that, Craig. I was going to preface it by saying there was a giant gulf between the bids, and I think it was almost double. So,
Yeah.
Craig, why don't you talk about how you do this?
Sure. So by nature of our final bids, just so you know, we resubmitted this bid under the guise that it would be a best and final, meaning no shot to come back and lower your pricing. We also prefaced it by saying that we informed all the bidders again that the unions had reached out to us saying that they were going to give pinpoint and target relief money back to the job, so that all of their final bids needed to include any discount pricing or any labor pricing relief that the unions were offering. In addition to that, during my interview process and descoping process with the bidders, I informed them of the percentage difference between them and the low bidder. And pretty much every company said the same thing. There's no way I can get there. So they were informed of a percentage cost differential that it would take to get to the low bid, and we received
no way
bidding information.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate that. I think it's a really important step, especially considering we're not talking about the utilization of state and federal funds here. So we have that type of flexibility. So I appreciate you going that extra step. Then I would ask the question then in order to really preserve the integrity of the lowest bid, are you going with a GMP on that contractor to make sure that they're not underbidding and then they're gonna drive up the price afterwards?
So our subcontract agreements are lump sum. So
guaranteed maximum price lump sum?
Correct. It's not a guaranteed maximum price. It's a lump sum contract. And so their pricing cannot change unless scope is changed in the form of revised documentation.
Okay. So it feels like all the protections were in place here to really give the best effort to go with that local labor. And it just wasn't possible. And you guys, I mean, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Jeff, I might add just in one quick comment in response to Tom's questions. As I mentioned earlier, we have a total of about $91 million in subcontracts on this job. This particular trade is less than 1% of the total cost. And as Craig mentioned, average about 10 people on the job a day, in the face of 18,000 man days over the project. So.
Absolutely, but I think it's important too, because I think our target, is 85% local at the end of the day. and we're pretty close to that margin. So, a few jobs here, a few jobs there are, pushing us in below the 85% pretty quickly. So.
Hey, Jeff, you're muted there.
Thank you, Connor. Anybody else questions for Kevin, Don, or Craig? Not hearing any, I would suggest we consider the local labor waiver for this project. And in doing so, if we're going to move ahead, I would need a motion to approve it with a second and a majority vote. Would any board member care to make that motion?
So move.
Motion by Bob, second to that motion. Second by Matt. Thank you, Matt. Any other discussion? We've had quite a bit, but this is one of many important decisions we make. Not hearing any other discussion, I would ask for a roll call vote, starting with John Dixon.
I vote yes.
John in favor, Matt Stoddard,
Matt, you're on mute.
Yes.
thank you, Matt. Bob
Yes.
in favor, Randy Green Piccarello. Randy, you there? Are you off mute, Randy? I'm not seeing Randy. Do you see her, Connor?
Yeah, I
I'm
see
here.
it.
I'm here.
How do you vote on the motion? Did you hear it, Randy, for the local
Yes.
labor?
Yes, I heard it, and yes,
You're in favor of the motion?
correct.
Aye.
Tom Jones in favor? And I think I'm the last one. I'm also in favor of the waiver and motion carried. Thank you, everybody, for the information, for attendance. Kevin, Loki, thanks. Don and Craig. Good luck with the project. I see it's really coming along. I can confirm the Haber House was moved and the main entrance road is, look, it didn't look quite done a couple days ago. Maybe it is now. It's close.
It's not quite done yet. We've got some work to do with the DOT, but yes, it's the main entrance. You can see where it will be now. Thank you, Chairman Chris and board members. Appreciate your consideration.
Have a good day and thank you for the Tom Strong contribution. That's significant.
Okay.
Our next item today is the consideration of the uniform tax exempt policy. And I don't expect a decision, but Connor's going to provide a update for us and then we'll have any discussion that the board desires. Connor.
Yeah, so just a quick update. During public comment, I think Sylvie gave a good overview of kind of some of the steps we've taken. And it's been a rewarding process to be able to receive public comment and then, quite frankly, take a lot of these public comments, meet with members of the community, and enact them where possible. So just briefly going over some of our additions, in section 4 of our draft UTEP, we added a project approval policy, which really breaks down the criteria needed to approve a project, whether it be the assessment, the cost benefit analysis, and then a few variables, for one, amount of private sector investment, value of tax exemptions and support, just to name a few. And then we also added a provision that no project will be considered for approval before we know who the applicant is, who the tenant of the project is, in line with some of the public authorities laws and some guidance from state officials on, best practices for transparency. On top of that, in working closely with the community, we edited some of our pilot schedules and then took one step, taking logistics projects, so warehousing and distribution, out of the 10-year schedule and putting it in a separate 10-year schedule, starting at 60% abatement for the first 3 years, dropping to 50%, then 5% each year thereafter until year 8, where it drops to 10%, where it drops by 10% until year 11 thereafter, they're paying full taxes. So this is a phased-in tax approach that's similar to the accelerated state 485 pilot programs that businesses are offered when they go into a community. So this is very similar. This large change came from working closely once again with the community, and kind of is a reflection of our strategic effort to pivot towards more innovative sectors, more future-ready sectors. So I do want to thank some of our partners in the community for working with me on this. It's been rewarding in that regard when it comes to logistics and warehousing projects. And a few other additions we added were one, an annual assessment policy. And this is generally, we take the time to assess each project. And these are things we're doing, but it's really writing it in stone. So whether it be field reports, examining, project progress and working with our consultants to ensure that projects are delivering on the promises made, we take it a step farther by adding a section that breaks down suspension, discontinuation, and recapture of benefits, which is all broken down in the policy, and it clearly shows expectations for projects and generally what circumstances will trigger a recapture event. So it's transparent in process for both the public and applicants looking to do projects. And it really hammers home the idea that if you want to do a project in the town of Montgomery, you have to be transparent in your process. And, so we have that. And those are some of the larger changes we've made, once again, based off public comment, based off working with the community. So between the multiple public hearings we've held, and interestingly, according to municipal law, they are for the taxing jurisdiction to submit comment. We've gone above and beyond by opening this public comment session to the public multiple times. And I've been out there in the community, taking input and actually editing the policy. So I think this board should be proud of their transparent and proactive efforts to ensure this policy is a product of community voice. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And in the meantime, we've received additional letters during the public comment period, which, we're evaluating some of the proposals, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few of them were adopted themselves. So congratulations to the board for this transparent process, and kudos to the public for working hand in hand together on this.
Thank you, Connor. Comments, thoughts from the board? I might just say, sometimes it gets lost, and nice job, Connor, on the overview. And you pretty much said it, but the one thing I think is important to remember is we reduced in many ways the tax incentives, tax abatements, I should say, for projects going ahead. And we're also making them more targeted to companies that could bring additional value to the town of Montgomery. If we don't move forward with this, we're going to be continuing with our old UTEP policy, and I don't think any of us feel that's acceptable. And Connor, I think we're under the impression you and Bob would draft a final draft of our policy a few days probably a week before our December 8th meeting to get on our website before we consider action on the revised UTEP.
I think that's fair. We'll take the newest public comments, incorporate them where appropriate, and then get that final draft posted on the website so our community can read and reach out to me with any additional questions that I'd be happy to answer.
Any thoughts on that, Bob?
No, I think that's right. I think that's right, and that's entirely doable.
Excellent. Anything else related to UTEP at this time?
Connor, I have
Jeff,
a bunch of notes on that RPM letter. I'm just going to take pictures of it and send it to you if that's okay, because I won't see you for a bit, I don't think.
Yeah, please do. Definitely.
Okay.
And if any members of the board, of course, have any thoughts, always reach out to me. And, this has been a participatory process throughout, so I'd, be happy to continue it.
You okay, Tom Jones?
Yeah, no, yeah. I just wanted to reflect on something, after listening to some of the public commentary today. And I think it's just really important to remember that our decisions are grounded on bringing new business to the town. It's not about providing benefits to and taking away revenue from the town. So in many instances, when we talk about or people reference the fact that it's burdens being put on the taxpayers, that we're taking away revenue from the schools or whatever it may be, I think it's a bit misunderstood, perhaps by accident, because we're talking about new deals coming to the town. We're not talking about taking the revenue away from the town. And I just think it's just fundamental to what we do. And every decision that we make, I think we carefully are going to be considering, would this business come here otherwise? Because it's also hinged on an argument or a theory that this business would come here no matter what, and that tax revenue would be paid from day one. So I know it's a very complex process, but I just want to reassure, our neighbors, essentially, that it's something that we take into full consideration. We take a holistic view on, and this is really new revenue, new job creation, and it's not converting and taking away. I hope that makes sense to others, but I feel like it gets lost in the discourse sometimes.
Well said, Tom. Bob?
Yes, that's pretty much what I was going to say when they alluded that one of the speakers said there were 21 properties the Valley Central School District is losing tax from. And Tom's right. We're not losing the tax because maybe they wouldn't have moved here. I know Unify, for one, for sure had a place in Connecticut they were considering strongly. So there's another question, and Bob, I have for you. When we grant these exemptions as UTEPs, I know probably almost every one of these exemptions that we've given have filed 5, 6, 7 years later a certiorari saying we've been overassessed, and every single one of them the town and the school district has lost. And is there anything legally we can put in these agreements, in these UTEP agreements, saying that if we're going to grant you this agreement, you have to agree that the assessment now is what you're going to stick with? You can't go back 5, 7 years, 8 years from now and say you've been overassessed.
I'll look at the agreements, Bob. I typically, I don't recall that there's any provision in the agreement that would address that, but I'll be happy to look at that and report at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else? We'll consider the final draft of the UTEP policy at our December 8th meeting then. Excellent. We do have a consideration of a second supplemental indenture related to Cedars. I think Bob's going to take us through that. It's mostly some technical stuff. Bob?
Yeah, so the board considered this back in, I think it was July The Cedars is a project that dates from, let me see,
2012, I believe.
2012 is correct. It's the apartment complex. And back in July, the bondholder requested certain supplements be made to the existing indenture that would allow them to change the holder of the bond. The holder of the bond is Wells Fargo, the purchaser of the bond, and Wells Fargo, as part of a securitization transaction, is apparently selling a whole bunch of these bonds as part of a restructuring. You did consent to the first supplemental indenture. Jeff did sign that back in September. It was provided to the attorneys for the owner's representative, which is Wells Fargo. They have come back, and I guess part of their larger transaction requires expansion of the definition of who can be the bond owner representative, and they want to include the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, otherwise known as Freddie Mac, as a potential holder for the securitization they're doing. Once again, as a reminder, these are conduit bonds. These are not bonds that are have any effect on the IDA. The bonds were issued on a tax-exempt basis to help the project. The IDA, the agency, has no obligations under the agreements or the bonds. You are the issuer, but your only obligation was to pay to the extent you have revenue, and that obligation was assigned at closing to the trustee, and the trustee has the obligation to pay the bondholders, provided they have the revenue from the project sponsor. So the second supplemental indenture has been provided. This is to make this additional change, and I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has them.
Questions, board? It doesn't really change anything except the bond holder for the Montgomery IDA, Bob.
The bondholder, which is the purchaser, was Wells Fargo. They're still the bondholder. They're just expanding the opportunity that they may have to provide a substitute bond owner representative, and that it's been now expanded to a bank or a trust company that may be located outside of New York State, must have at least $25 million in reported capital and surplus, and could also include, as I said, the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, which is otherwise known as, we all know as Freddie Mac.
Does that impact any risk or liability that we didn't already have?
None whatsoever.
Anything else before I ask for a motion to accept
Yeah,
that?
I have a question. I was just wondering, is this a normal procedure, Bob, that happens all the time?
No, in the sense that I've never had two requests in a short period of time like this. An amendment to an indenture after a period of time for a holder to want to sell the bond to someone else is not unusual. In this case, the documents were drafted that would allow the bond owner representative to sell to another party. In this case, they're trying to expand their universe of holders because of their securitization on a larger scale that we really have no knowledge of. But there's to the agency's point, there's nothing in the documents that prevent this, and there's no additional risk for the agency. So I think it's a little bit unusual to have two requests within a short period of time. The lawyers for Wells Fargo explained it that they missed it the first time, that they needed to include Freddie Mac, and that's why they're including this again now. This should be the last supplemental indenture. I think this is a year-end transaction that they want to get closed in 2020. And then presumably, I think these bonds were 20-year bonds, so presumably they'll be paid off at some point in the next 12 years.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I feel like I abstained last time we voted on this because it was so long before I was on the IDA. Does anyone recall that?
Sounds vaguely familiar, but I
Okay,
couldn't.
I thought so. Okay.
Would anyone care to make a motion to accept this second supplemental indenture?
I'll
I-
make
I
that.
I would note that, Randy, to your point, no member of this board was present in 2012.
Good point, Bob. And this is by resolution, I believe, Bob,
Right.
which board members have a copy of. I do. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to approve by John Dixon. Have a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Matt. Second. Discussion. I'll do a roll call vote, starting with John Dixon,
Yes.
Matt Stoddard,
Yes.
Bob Santo,
Yes.
Randy Prick. I'm not used to your last.
Me neither. I'm going to abstain again this time on this one.
Tom Jones,
Aye.
and I'm in favor. We have 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and that resolution is passed. Thank you for that consideration.
Thank you for that. And Randy, could I just confirm, are you using green Picarello or just
No,
Picarello?
Just Picarello.
Okay.
Forever and ever.
Okay.
I didn't know that, Randy. Thank you. I knew it was out there. I didn't know you wanted to use.
Yeah, it's happening.
Next up is consideration of a state disaster grant award for Spruce Lodge. We have a proposed resolution for that. Connor's going to review the requirements, and the Matt's going to provide a recommendation. Connor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we know, the state has allowed us to offer small grants to businesses and nonprofits negatively impacted by COVID-19. These grant awards come with strict requirements, of course. So the application we got, which is redacted version posted on our website, is Colden Manor at Spruce Lodge, which is a catering hall in our town. They've requested $2,991.41 to reimburse the costs of PPE to slow the spread of COVID-19, which is permissible under the statute and in our grant program if the request was made after the state disaster declaration, which it has been. So the statute requirements are the applicant must be a small business or nonprofit located in the jurisdiction that is in the town of Montgomery. Spruce Lodge is, that checks that box off. Not only is it located here, it has a long-standing history in the community. It's been in operation since 1953. So a real piece of our history here. The second requirement is the business must have not more than 50 employees. This is indeed the case. Spruce Lodge reported having 7 employees. Another requirement is they have to be financially viable prior to the state disaster declaration. And on this, we worked with Nugent Hausler, our local consulting, our accounting firm, and they provided us with an objective financial analysis matrix that can grade and assign a grade to financial viability, which I'll go through a little bit later in this presentation. And then we did find them to be financially viable. And then the last and basic requirement is they had to have been negatively impacted by COVID-19, which they have been clearly. So I'll jump into the financial analysis portion. So the Nugent Hauser provided us with a scoring matrix out of 20 points, and a score of 10 generally indicates financial viability. So the first variable is time in business. If a business has been open for more than 5 years, it's awarded 3 points. Financial statement level of assurance. The compilation of financial statements, generally accepted accounting principles, is awarded 3 points. The basis of financial statement preparation. If it is generally accepted accounting principles, they're awarded 1 point. It is. Current financial information. Spruce Lodge submitted their current financial information along with 3 years to give a financial condition of their business, so they were awarded 3 points. Net worth. Spruce Lodge has a positive net worth. They were awarded 2 out of 3 points. And then the financial condition and situation ratios. The current ratio and debt to equity ratio generally indicate financial stability. So when you add everything up, this entity was awarded 14 points out of 20. 10 indicates financial viability. This meets the threshold. So between being a small business located in our jurisdiction, having not more than 50 employees, having been negatively impacted by COVID-19, and proving some degree of financial viability before the state disaster declaration, they seem to check off all the boxes. So with that, I'm open to answering any questions and that you might have.
Connor, is there any criteria around maintaining employment?
Excuse me, Tom?
Is there any criteria around maintaining employment?
Not necessarily criteria, but something we included in the application was there a reasonable effort made to retain it or retain their employees, which I have right in front of me right now. Got it here, just bear with me. There is so during the state disaster emergency, they weren't able to retain any jobs. And in reading their statement, it's generally because it's a family-owned business that has had to cancel all of its catering events and had to buy PPE with the hope of potentially hosting some small events that are in line with New York State guidelines. But as we know, the catering business took a hit, so the revenue they had coming in was, I can imagine, little to none, I would think, as is the case with many businesses, unfortunately.
So we're being asked to reimburse for PPE that ultimately wasn't utilized.
So I can't speak to how many events they did have, but we are, being asked to reimburse their PPE, with the hopes, it could help them, stop closing down potentially, and maybe even be there for when events are being held. But I can't speak to the amount they've had, if any, during the pandemic. I would imagine little to none.
I'm having trouble hearing Connor.
Tom.
All right, me too.
Can you hear me now?
Speaker.
No, it's all graveled. No.
I don't know if you have an alternative system for audio. It was clear until this last. No.
Connor, try turning off your video, Connor, and maybe it'll open up some bandwidth.
Good thought, Tom. How's
anything? Nothing.
Sounds not too good. It's marginal whether we can understand you. I think I have so far. Did you have any follow-up, Tom, it's clear the business plans to continue and use that PPE going ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, my takeaways were that they had to let employment, or they did not maintain employment, that they are financially viable. They're in a relatively strong financial position, which is great. They bought the PPE in anticipation of providing services, but they're not providing those services. So I think it's questionable whether that PPE will be used. We're on the verge of a vaccine becoming available in the coming months. So to me, it's a questionable proposition, because to Connor's last point, which I heard him correctly, said it could help them from going out of business. If we're talking about a $2,000 grant helping an operation like that from keeping them from going out of business, I would think there's bigger issues. But it also doesn't jive with the 14 out of 20 calculation that he was describing. So I don't know. Just my analytical brain going to work there.
They did continue some events. I attended one very small one back in maybe September. But that's the only thing I can offer, that they didn't cancel everything.
Okay.
The grant program and application's been very dicey. We haven't awarded any to this time because of some of those issues. So this is a case I can vouch is needed. I understand your questions. I think they're good questions. Matt, did you have thoughts?
Well, like you said, we put this program together to help the small businesses in the town. And as of today, this was the first one that's come before us that is viable. And personally, I'm 100% for it. I think the Spruce Lodge has been around for a long time. And if we have the program in place, we have the money already allocated. And if we can reach out and help some of these businesses, I'm 100% for it.
Well said, Matt. Any other questions, comments? I'm not sure if we can hear Connor. How is it now, Connor?
Does it work now? Can you hear me? No.
Not good. Would anyone care to make a motion for this resolution authorizing the grant for this business Spruce Lodge?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Matt, second to that motion.
Second it.
Second by John. Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll again call for the roll call vote, starting with John.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Bob.
Abstain.
Randy.
Yes.
Tom.
Hear me now.
Aye,
We're not
sorry.
here. You said you're in favor, right, Tom?
Yeah, based on Matt's assessment.
And I'm in favor. So that gives us 5 votes for the resolution, 1 abstention, and the resolution is approved.
Jeff, who seconded
Anything
that?
else? It was John Dixon.
Thank you.
Good deal. Moving on to the draft budget for fiscal year 2021. I can do that quickly, Connor. Oh, okay. Call me and I'll put you on speaker. We'll see what happens. Oh, you know what? Now I gotta turn my bloody phone on. 1 second. It should only take me. Now it wants me to update my widgets, for crying out loud. I think I'm getting there. Notifications. Okay, how's that, Connor?
Can you guys hear me
Can you hear Connor?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can't make up all these technological things going on. I will go to the share screen and then open up budget. Okay, so let me take you through this. We have our projected budget for fiscal year 2021, projected revenue. The operating revenues of $150,000 based on two medium-sized projects forecasted for. And our investment earnings are based off of a 5-year running forecast and correspondence with our bank, bringing the projected revenue to $151,500. Our projected expenses are broken down: salaries and wages at $65,000, marketing and web services $8,000. So that's with the expectation that we work with marketing firm to put the materials, as well as our website update. Professional services with an asterisk, which is down at the bottom of the page. You'll see whether legal, secretarial, accounting, and consulting fees, which is the remaining balance of the quarter study, which we'll have to pay in fiscal year 2021, come back to $61,066, and other operating expenses of $15,000, which could generally be miscellaneous, office supplies, or anything that potentially could come up that needs additional expenditures. So our projected surplus deficit is $2,434 based on, once again, two potentially medium-sized projects and the closing of hopefully Matrix Maple Solar and our forecasted investment earnings. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
And the reason Connor's bringing this up is we're required, I believe, by Paris and or the ABO to present a budget before the end of the year.
Correct.
Any questions for Connor? Not hearing any, we'll take action at the December meeting on this, and just wanted to give you a heads up on it.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I put together spending analysis of our year-to-date spending, just to give the board a picture of where we've been this year. Quickly, professional services has been the bulk of our expenditures, which is to be expected, followed by salaries, marketing and website, and then our webinars dues. That includes marketing, that includes New York State EDC dues and webinars, and then publications in the paper amount to a small percentage of our funds. Total year-to-date spending of $105,133.66, with once again the two largest expenditures being professional services and salaries.
Thank you, Connor. Anything else on the draft budget? I know there's some echo. I'm trying to figure out what to mute when, but moving on to the executive director's report, I believe that was sent out previously. And as presented, unless there's a question or.
Yes, so I'll just briefly go through that. A lot of the work this month has been business development, business attraction and retention efforts. One, working with this development of the fiscal year budget, working with some of the audit committee members on local labor, and continuing the UTEP efforts and getting out there in the community, and ensuring that there's some representation in our policies. But a lot of, once again, just the business development side, getting out there and exploring potential projects, and then let me pull up. So our risk and compliance report is, I was happy to see so many board members attend the New York State EDC IDA training. I believe that brings just about our whole entire board into training compliance for the year. So kudos to you, congratulations. And other matters to take note of, we have the budget, prepared to be, take next steps on that in December. And another item to take note of, I was accepted into the Leadership Orange Professional Development Program with a $500 scholarship, and the IDA was my sponsorship organization. So I appreciate the opportunity there. And thank you, Bob. And the last item to take note of is we have our next round of logos ready to be presented, which I'll do another screen share for after this report. And then an idea moving forward that I've been playing around with was, approaching the school district and asking them to form some sort of economic development committee, small committee that I could liaise with, and to build that relationship and to make sure they're on the same page, and maybe even to give them a better insight into the importance of pilots and the mechanisms in which they work and the ways in which they work. So that's something I'm going to be exploring as we move forward.
Thank you, Connor. Any questions on that? Not hearing any. Our next item is the financial report for October 2020. Matt, can you go forward with that?
Absolutely. Checkbook beginning balance from last report, $570,269. Checks for the month of October. Delaware Engineering Corridor Study, $18,333. Acquisitions Marketing, Inc., $1,075. And Suzanne Hayden, $2,000. Checks for the month were $21,408, bringing the checking account balance to $548,861. Sailfish escrow account, beginning balance of $25,175. Checks from that account, Loki Brill Consulting Group, $1,185, bringing the checking account balance to $23,990. Then we have Orange Bank and Trust, $548,861. Then we have Orange Bank and Trust Sailfish escrow account, $23,990. And the Orange Bank and Trust money market, which we have $455,733, bringing a grand total of $1,028,624,000.
So listen, if you punch.
Questions for a motion to accept the financial report for October 2020.
I make that motion.
Appreciated.
I'll second.
Motion by John Dixon. Second by Bob Santo. Thank you. Roll call vote, starting with John Dixon.
Yes.
Matt Stoddard.
Yes.
Bob Santo.
Yes.
Randy Picariello.
Yes.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
And I'm in favor, Jeff. So we have 6 in favor of accepting the financial report for October. Motion carried. And going on to other business, I would just congratulate Connor for his Leadership Orange selection. And on logos, Connor's going to share the screen again. I wasn't seeing your screen share, only your menu. call me back, I'll put you back on. I was just trying to control the echo. And while Connor's calling me back, our next scheduled meeting is December 8th. We would like to move that meeting to 5:30 on the 8th, which will allow scheduling for an update on the corridor study with some preliminary ideas from Delaware Engineering. Is that you're going to work for board members? 5:30 on December 8th. It was scheduled for 1 o'clock that day.
All right, can you hear me?
I can.
So we have we have the next round of logos done by Acquisitions Marketing. We sent them a design actually done by board member Jones, and they kind of ran with it and wanted to incorporate our history of rail and then the fact that we have an airport, within our town bounds. So they went with this pretty outside the box and, in my opinion, memorable design that shows, town of Montgomery IDA with two of our our main transportation assets. And I do have the old logos for reference, but curious to hear board member thoughts on this batch of logos.
I think they're an improvement. Other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. Could we get a more updated locomotive?
My comment too. Trains are passé, especially those. How do you like the airplane?
The airplanes look good.
I would at least drop the
Other
smoke off the
thoughts?
train. I said I would, yeah. And maybe add a tree as one of the legs, a little green in there. But I like it. And Connor, I just want to say I appreciate you taking me seriously because I just had fun sketching it out a little bit and didn't expect to see him again.
We should contract you. Just kidding, Billy. Great.
What do you suggest for timetable on approving a logo? Connor, it sounds like we have some further suggestions. I know this is ongoing for a while. I think a lot of them are already incorporated.
Yeah, I think it would be ideal if we could have a logo, adopted, I suppose, at the December 8th meeting. I can take, your comments back to Billy and have him work something up. But, that could greatly help our marketing effort, kind of our branding effort, especially as we start to look for companies that specialize in marketing. Having kind of a catchy logo to use would be ideal.
Because we have the town for the town of Montgomery, so we're separated from Montgomery County. I think the thought to get rid of the smoke and modernize the engine, and then to get to the rural character and agriculture, a tree or some landscape, if it could be added. And I don't know if I'm wild about these colors, if there's some other choices that would make it a little bit more green.
I like the bottom right one without the smoke from the locomotive for whatever that's worth.
I think you should get rid of that tan.
So there's a couple of comments. I don't know if you could hear Connor. John said get rid of the tan color, and Randy likes the bottom. And what did you say about that, Randy?
If you could get rid of the steam from the locomotive, I like the bottom right one the best out of all four of those.
Yeah, I think that one looks nice.
I agree.
Except for that tan color.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think we could take the second leg of the M and maybe convert that into the evergreen or something,
Yeah, or even make like the tea green or something.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think we're getting somewhere now. Excellent. Well, maybe we can polish this off in the next couple of weeks, Connor, and have a decision December 8th. Anything else for today's meeting, Connor?
No, I think this was a productive meeting, and thanks everybody for being flexible. You know, you definitely unpredictable times, but I think we had an efficient meeting.
Do you
Unless
think
anyone has
next-
anything else, I would.
Yeah, I just
Go
quick
ahead.
one. Do you think we'll be meeting in person next time, or will the quarantine still, will the town hall still be shut down?
I would imagine that town hall would be open by then, but you know, the town's policy for having the in-person meetings might change. But that's something I'll talk to the town about and definitely keep the whole board in the loop. But it seems like things are definitely up in the air right now, whether we're gonna meet in person or not.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
And Jeff,
To that point, John. Tom?
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say to John's point, having Mary Beth and Sandy Mathis at the next meeting with presumably maps, there'd be some value to in person if that's an option from a business standpoint.
Yep.
Anything else? Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So December 8th, 6 p.m. I'm sorry, 5:30. I personally wouldn't be able to join until just shortly after 6. So I apologize for that, but I have another board meeting from 3 to 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So if you're
thanks.
okay with me being
Thanks
late,
for
I'll be late.
that update.
Yep.
The other thing we could consider, Connor, is just moving it till 6.
I'm fine coming in
So
late
we-
if you're
we
okay
can
with
work
it.
that out.
Yep.
Let's stick with 5:30 for the moment, and we'll talk about it in the meantime. Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting today? By Bob
so
Santo,
moved.
second to that motion.
I make
Thank
it.
you, John. How do you vote on the,
I vote yes.
you're in favor, John? John?
Yes.
Good, good. I got a guy coming down to you tomorrow. He's got a note on handrail.
You're in favor, Matt,
Yes, sir.
for motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Figure, Bob, I'll kick through the, Bob,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes,
Randy, in favor?
yes.
And
Aye.
Tom in favor?
Yes.
I'm in favor. Motion adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob, Sue.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Connor,
Everybody,
good job.
happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Be safe.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.